Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Jersey Buzz. And I have with me a really amazing guest who knows a lot about history. But there's also an initiative here of how you can help our history from New Jersey and make sure that 2026 for the 250th is actually going to happen. So, Sally Lane, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you are, I knew you back in the days when you were running Trenton's historical, the visitor center.
Yes, right.
A lot of stuff. Just give everyone a little bit of background of you.
Newspapers originally wrote a column for 8 years on Sundays about the history of Trenton, which meant I had to research a lot of things and learn it. So that's why some people think I know everything there is to know about Trenton. No. And then I worked at DEP, mainly parks, from the assistant commissioner's office, and then ended up at Thomas Edison State College doing special projects, which really was archives. Nice.
And there's a lot of history in this area. And that's how I knew you. So whenever I see your name, I think of history. So there you go. Now, you're now on the board of directors?
I was a founding member of Crossroads when it got started in 2002. And that was a group of people who got together and said, this should happen.
Wow, that was a long time ago.
And yes. And lobbied Congress.
Cool.
And so I am back as now the board chair.
Okay, so Crossroads of
the American Revolution Association, because Crossroads is a national heritage area.
Okay.
There are 62 across the country. We are the only one in New Jersey. And we are the only one that is thematically just involved with the American Revolution. Okay. There is now a South Carolina trail that also does that, but we're the only NHA.
Okay. Well, so one of the things that, I'm from Montana, and I come to New Jersey and I see what a lot of people don't see, and that's the rich history of it. And what makes New Jersey such a significant location for the story of America? Because some people may not know, because a lot of people aren't from, we're a little melting pot here.
So it was the most diverse colony, as it is still the most diverse state. But overwhelmingly, it is our position between New York and Philadelphia. Philadelphia was the capital in the early days of the revolution, mm-hmm. and certainly the largest city. And New York was the British capital. And the armies crisscrossed New Jersey all the time because they were always in one place or the other.
Right.
2 winters Washington spent in New Jersey, and multiple big battles, but in different times and places through the 8 years of the war.
I learned something new today. Because, I love history, but I don't read it and study it, but I love listening to people who do, for sure.
Well, so the 2 things that we say most often about the Rev War in New Jersey to get people's attention is that Washington spent 1/4 of the revolution in New Jersey, which is really kind of astonishing when you think about it. And that we had far more armed encounters going anywhere from a skirmish to a full battle than any other state. We had 600 it's over 600, but that have been inventoried as sources, really saying they happened and how many people were involved and that kind of thing. And no other state can claim more than about 300, I believe.
Wow, that's a lot.
So what it tells you is this was a civil war for 8 years because, unlike the common theory that everybody just ran off laid down their pitchforks and ran off to be in the army. Both sides were represented here, loyalists and continentals. And of course, we had the Hessian armed forces here at numerous times.
Right. So in saying that, obviously you have Patriots Week, you have, the barracks, then you have Princeton and Battlefield that they do their reenactment. So, and Monmouth. I don't know if Monmouth was really part of all that. Again,
Yes.
I'm learning.
Monmouth is the longest one-day battle of the war and the hottest.
Really? Okay.
Just a horrendous inferno-like day where they fought and fought and fought.
Really?
Yeah.
See, you learn something new. This is why people, whenever I go to these I learn something new all the time. It's a lot to comprehend if you don't study it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's what this organization is for, is to help people. Because when I go to your website, I can find out when the reenactments are. I can learn about history maps. So tell why people should actually visit the site. It's pretty cool.
So the reason that Crossroads of the American Revolution exists is that New Jersey is such a mon pa state in that we have all these municipalities. We have all these little, people will say, oh, we had a battle here. Our battle was, and so there's not, in other states, there's kind of a campaign, one campaign, and everything fits neatly.
Mm-hmm.
That's not our experience. And our experience is also geographically all over the state. So it's very hard when people say, well, tell me what I should visit in New Jersey, So
Yeah.
we started out the 250th planning by doing a huge survey of, it turned out to be a little more than 150 sites. There were either historic sites of the 18th century or earlier, or monuments, outdoor site,
Mm-hmm.
having to do with the Revolutionary War. Some of them, when we did the survey in 2019, ending in 2020, just before really things closed down, some of them were not interpreting. Some of them are privately owned.
Right.
Some of them were also not interpreting the revolution so much. You take something like Morven, which is an 18th century house with fabulous history, but they are an art gallery essentially for changing exhibits. So they weren't leaning into so much of their Rev War stuff.
Okay.
And that's true also of the Trent House in Trenton. Built in 1719, has a whole history well before the Revolution and after. They weren't and the Rochambeau Trail and Rochambeau's French army going through the country from Newport, they land in Trenton they camp there. And so that sort of brought them into the story.
Wow. I'm just listening to you talk. I'm fascinated. You're like a walking encyclopedia. I love
Well,
it.
I've had a lot of time to learn all this.
I know. You have been around a little bit on that. But I mean, also it's something of deep interest and you know how to explain it well. And I think that's part of why this organization is important, is because it literally explains and it shows maps and it's where you can go for things. And that's why you brilliantly laid out. Now, how does that correlate with the 250th? Are you guys one and the same?
So in 2018, the legislature established something as an oversight group for the 250th with the New Jersey Historical Commission. Mm-hmm. Within the Department of State, and then Crossroads. And so we are partners, and we call our partnership Revolution NJ or Rev NJ.
Okay.
And that is the entity that is doing this celebration. So we're planning for things, and our responsibility is also to see that they happen.
Right. I know we just got partnered with the 250th think it's Rev NJ.
Yep.
So proudly so, people. So we're excited about that because I remember when you guys started the Crossroad, this organization, I went to a meeting. It was a long time ago. I was like, wow, that was a hot minute now that you were dating things.
Yeah.
And we're here. Like,
and you know, so there were the historical commission at the outset of this planning process did a lot of listening sessions and brought together different groups of people. And what they learned that wasn't a surprise was that almost everybody not involved in some way said things like, oh, the Revolutionary War, no, that doesn't have anything to do with me. And the peril here is that, yeah, it has to do with all of us. Whenever our people came here, however they got here,
right.
Because the things we tried to establish in the American Revolution are the things we're still working to get right. We declared that all men were born free, but we didn't follow up on that. We, you know, all these things that we said are still the things we're fighting about today, or, you know, have like, we haven't quite, you know.
Yeah. No, it's true. Now that you think about it, and a lot of that has come out kind of recently.
And for one part of this, it makes sense to understand about what impelled them to do what they did. It makes sense to get over the kind of legendary stuff like everybody wanted to be a patriot. No, there were really nuanced reasons why people weren't sure, hedged, went back and forth. I mean, your livelihood as a merchant depended on getting along with whichever army was occupying your town.
Yeah.
And when they moved on, it might be the other, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of the same now.
It is, you know, you can
Just
look at this and say,
we've come a long way, but yet have we?
And the other thing I just have to say is that what we learned, particularly from the listening sessions, was that we had to keep explaining to people that we want them to understand about how people like them got through the revolution. And that means all people.
Yeah.
Because there were enslaved and indentured servants, there were handicapped people, there were women left to manage farms or shops. You know, all these populations existed then, including immigrants of different nationalities.
Yeah. That was, I have to say, that's what makes America great, is the fact that we are of all nationalities. And, you know, if you want to understand where we are today, you have to understand how we got here, because freedom isn't free.
No.
There was a lot of people that sacrificed and, you know, fought for this that weren't able to see today, and to not appreciate your freedom and how it got here. It's kind of disrespectful to those who lost their lives for it. And that's in my opinion, of course. However, there's, you know, a lot going on. How can people and businesses, first of all, get involved? Because I'm assuming there's going to be some major tourism involved.
We certainly hope so.
Yeah, I know. I mean, me too, because I really feel that we have so many stories to be told. And it's not just revolutionary. There's a lot, even though this is the focal point. But if someone's here to visit, there's so many places to shop, dine, play, and even if you have children, what's going to happen? So how can a business, or how can people support what you guys are doing? Because that 2026 is like around the corner.
So, we have on the Rev NJ, I'm just going to call it because that's what we usually say, Rev NJ website, we have areas that say you can be a proud partner, you can be this. So whether you're a business or a group of people, a society of some kind, a nonprofit, you can join, and it's free. And all it does is to say that you are interested in knowing more and having some connection, and it enables you to use the logos and some of that kind of thing. There's also a portion for municipalities and counties.
Okay.
We want every county, Mercer County's already done it. We want every county and every municipality to become one of these partners, to recognize that, they've got a role in this too.
Yeah, no, I actually went and made sure the towns that I do marketing for, that they were on there, and they were.
Yeah.
So I was like, good job, good job. But if you're not, have people go to your website and get involved, because this isn't, I'm hoping this is the beginning of something that's going to continue.
I think so. And the reason I say that is I was involved in the 225th. And at the time, I went on an NAACP cable show, and the host said, after I'd done the talking about it, said, this has nothing to do with my people. And I was like, ooh, no, wrong. Both armies, both the Brits and the Continentals, had blacks, enslaved and not.
Right.
Native Americans, because Washington was, as a slave owner himself from the South, was originally against that. But the British offered anybody, a place in their army and said you'd be freed afterwards. While that didn't mostly turn out to be true. It certainly brought in a number of people. And so then Washington had to follow suit. And in the end, there were large numbers of both. And some slave owners sent a slave in their place. And then some of them were freed afterwards.
Yeah.
Some of them probably were, but I mean, there's a lot of complexity to this that people don't right away think of. They just think of white male farmers.
No,
it's everybody.
It was everybody. 100%. I mean, I know, because I go to a lot of the reenactments and educate myself. And it's interesting. I encourage anybody to go to a reenactment and watch the women who are preparing the meal with it's the hearth kitchen cooking.
Yeah,
hearth. Okay. Hearth. And it's cool. I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. That's all I can say.
and people say, ooh, camp followers, like they're all sluts. No. Many of them are the wives of the soldiers.
Yep.
I mean, today too, but because they weren't able to live on their own. They didn't have a farm. Mm-hmm. How were they going to exist? So they, and sometimes children, followed along after the army. They did the washing of the clothes that the men wore. They mended things. I mean, they had a role.
Yeah.
Because how do you, especially we had all these militias who we don't even have records from a lot of who served. Yeah. Because we weren't organized. Right. We weren't planning on fighting a war. So you had all these things that how is it going to get taken care of?
I know. I didn't even think of that. You see them there. You don't put it together, but you're right. Women back then, they weren't even really allowed to go anywhere by themselves, let alone live.
They couldn't own property. They couldn't, lots of things.
Lots of things.
Also just if you had a subsistence farm, now in some cases, slaves or indentured servants were left to do it with family. And that altered how people got along too, because now you're all together in survival.
In survival mode. Yeah.
Yep. It's just, there's so many stories. And what's happened in the last 25 years particularly is that we know more about individuals. We've found more, and all the digitization of records is just a godsend for researchers.
Yeah, sure.
So you're able to follow people, figure out where they went, figure out what they did before and after. Stories. Yep.
Great stories around, especially in this area.
Yes.
There's a lot. Well, coming up, I know you guys, I received an email and there's a call to action. Want to enlighten everybody on how they can help.
We, as we are a federally funded entity, like all national heritage areas. Every national heritage area in the country gets the same amount of money, no matter how large the area is or how big their operations are. It's $500,000 a year. And that's what we use to pay salaries. It's what we use to do workshops. It's how we bring in people to do marketing of everybody.
There's a lot too.
There are all these things that we pay for out of that. And we are required to match that. So every year we have to come up with $500,000 to match it. And so that's what we operate on. And now with what's going on in Washington, and, this past week, 1,000 people were let go from the National Park Service, which is where we get our money from.
Right.
There has been intimations that there will be more layoffs there. We don't know if our program will continue to exist. We will be a 501c3 if we can figure out how to fund ourselves.
Right.
And we currently, our relationship with the state is we're the ones carrying out a lot of their consultant contracts and things. So we have a role to play. It's just, can we continue to exist? And the current budget federal budget year that we're in, the national heritage areas had bipartisan support across the country and had no problem being in the budget. So what we're doing as a group of the 62 is we're asking people we interact with, we help, we work with, to write letters to their senators and congressmen saying that they have used our services, appreciate what we're able to do, and want to see us continue.
We have come so far in New Jersey to get to this point of history and marketing and promoting it. And it's always the Jersey Shore. Look, I love New Jersey, but it's always the Jersey Shore. Now we're at a point where we have an opportunity to promote history and keep it alive. Like, look at all Philadelphia does a great job. Williamsburg, Virginia. I mean, just in saying we can be that, but you guys have gotten all this momentum, and I'd hate to see it just fall through the cracks because nobody used their voice to help you.
It's a tough time for us, particularly because we have been doing planning with FIFA for the World Cup, which is, Liberty State Park is going to be the center for things for a month in 2026. And they've asked us to have a history fair that goes on for that period, bringing in people from around the state.
Because that's also in 2026, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like
leading up to July 4th, actually.
Okay.
And so, it's called the number 4 sales. That's the tall ships this time. That's happening. All these things are being planned and put in place.
Okay.
And we may not get there.
You may not.
On our side.
You may not survive it.
Just because we don't survive.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and giving everybody information about our history as well as what you guys are doing. And we ask that everybody in the link, there's links below, please get just support because it's our history. If you live in New Jersey, it's important.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, again, this is important information. We're a voice for community. So like, share, comment, and please do a call to action for this effort to preserve our history in New Jersey. Until next time, buzzing off.